Imagine scrolling through real estate listings and finding your dream home at an unbelievable price. Beautiful architecture, great neighborhood, spacious rooms, and the cost is almost too good to be true. You jump at the opportunity, sign the papers, and move in with excitement. 6 months later, you're dead. Then the next family moves in, lured by the same incredible deal, and they die too. Then another family and another. Over the span of just 8 years, 4 different tenants died in the same house under circumstances that seemed natural at first, but when examined together, revealed something far more sinister. This isn't an urban legend or a ghost story. This is a real case that baffled investigators, terrified a community, and exposed a truth more disturbing than any supernatural explanation. Welcome back to Crime Scout. True Stories. Today, we're examining a case that starts with tragedy, multiplies into a pattern, and ends with a revelation that changed how we think about hidden dangers in the places we call home. The house in question sits on a quiet, tree-lined street in a middle-class neighborhood of St. Louis, Missouri. Built in 1962, it's a modest 2-story colonial with 3 bedrooms, a basement, and a small backyard. Nothing about it stands out. It looks like every other house on the block, the kind of place where families should grow old together, where children should learn to ride bikes on the sidewalk out front. But between 2008 and 2016, this house became a death trap that claimed 4 lives before anyone understood what was really happening. The first death occurred in December of 2008. Thomas Brennan, a 47-year-old accountant, had been renting the house for about 7 months. He lived alone after a divorce and kept mostly to himself. On a cold winter morning, his office called the police when he didn't show up for an important client meeting and wasn't answering his phone. Officers performed a welfare check and found Thomas dead in his bed. There was no sign of violence, no break-in, nothing suspicious. The medical examiner ruled it a heart attack. Thomas had been overweight, led a sedentary lifestyle, and had high cholesterol. His death, while sad, seemed entirely natural. The case was closed without investigation. The house sat vacant for a few months before being rented again in mid-2009 to the Kowalski family, Robert and Linda, both in their early 50s, along with Linda's elderly mother, Dorothy, who was 78. They were thrilled with the rental price, which was surprisingly low for such a nice property. The landlord explained it away as wanting good tenants more than maximum profit. Everything seemed fine for the first few months. Then, in February of 2010, Dorothy was found unresponsive in her bedroom. Paramedics were called, but couldn't revive her. Once again, the death seemed explainable. Dorothy had been in declining health, with diabetes and heart problems. Her death was attributed to natural causes related to her existing conditions. The Kowalskis grieved but continued living in the house. Then, just 4 months later, Robert Kowalski died in his sleep. He was only 53. The medical examiner found he'd suffered a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lung. Tragic, but not unheard of. Linda was devastated, having lost both her mother and her husband within months. She moved out immediately, unable to bear staying in the house where so much loss had occurred. Still, no one connected the dots. 3 deaths in the same house within 18 months seemed like terrible coincidence, but each death had a medical explanation. The house was rented again in late 2010 to Marcus and Jennifer Hayes, a couple in their 30s with a 5-year-old daughter named Emma. They were excited about the space and the affordable rent. The landlord mentioned previous tenants had experienced family emergencies that forced them to leave, but assured them the house itself was perfectly fine. For over a year, the Hayes family lived there without incident. Emma started kindergarten, Jennifer set up a home office for her graphic design business, and Marcus commuted to his job at a manufacturing plant. They seemed happy. Then, in January of 2012, tragedy struck again. Jennifer began feeling ill with what she thought was the flu. Headaches, nausea, fatigue, dizziness. She assumed she'd picked up a bug from Emma's school. But instead of improving, she got worse. One morning, Marcus found her unconscious in the bathroom. She was rushed to the hospital but died 3 days later. The cause of death was listed as sudden cardiac arrest, though doctors noted it was unusual for someone her age with no prior heart conditions. Marcus was shattered. He packed up Emma and moved back in with his parents, unable to even look at the house anymore. By this point, the landlord had rented the house 4 times in just over 3 years, and 4 people had died. But because the deaths were spread across different families and all had different medical explanations, no pattern was officially recognized. The deaths were never reported together, filed under different case numbers, handled by different medical examiners on different days. The house wasn't flagged. No investigation was launched. It would take one more death before the truth finally emerged. In 2013, the house was rented to Brian Walsh, a 31-year-old teacher. He'd recently accepted a position at a local high school and needed a place quickly. The rent was cheap, the house was available immediately, and Brian didn't ask too many questions. He moved in that August. By October, he was experiencing strange symptoms, severe headaches that seemed worse in the mornings, constant fatigue even after a full night's sleep, occasional nausea, and difficulty concentrating. He saw his doctor multiple times, but standard tests showed nothing alarming. His doctor suggested stress from the new job and prescribed rest, but Brian was methodical and kept a detailed journal, a habit from his years in education. He noted that his symptoms seemed to improve on weekends when he visited his girlfriend across town, but returned with a vengeance after spending nights at home. That observation saved his life. Brian started researching environmental causes for his symptoms, and one possibility kept appearing in his searches: carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide is called the silent killer for good reason. It's colorless, odorless, and tasteless. It's produced by burning fuel in cars, stoves, lanterns, fireplaces, and furnaces. When it accumulates in enclosed spaces, it replaces oxygen in the bloodstream, causing tissue damage and death. The symptoms of poisoning, headaches, dizziness, nausea, and fatigue are often mistaken for the flu or other common illnesses. Long-term exposure at moderate levels can cause serious health problems. High-level exposure causes unconsciousness and death. Brian purchased a carbon monoxide detector on his way home from school one day. Within minutes of plugging it in, the alarm was screaming. The levels in his house were dangerously high. He immediately evacuated and called 911. The fire department responded with gas detection equipment and confirmed lethal levels of carbon monoxide throughout the house, particularly concentrated in the bedrooms and basement. Brian was taken to the hospital for evaluation and treatment. He'd come terrifyingly close to becoming the 5th victim. The fire department's investigation revealed the source. The house's furnace, original to the 1962 construction, had a cracked heat exchanger. Every time the heating system ran, carbon monoxide leaked into the ductwork and circulated throughout the house. The system had been failing for years, getting progressively worse. During winter months, when the furnace ran constantly, the carbon monoxide built up to lethal concentrations, especially at night when people were sleeping and exposure was prolonged. This discovery immediately triggered a broader investigation. Detectives pulled records for all deaths at that address. When they saw 4 fatalities in just 4 years, all during cold weather months when the furnace would be running, the pattern became horrifyingly clear. Each death was re-examined. Thomas Brennan's heart attack, Dorothy's death attributed to existing conditions, Robert's pulmonary embolism, and Jennifer's cardiac arrest, all were consistent with carbon monoxide poisoning. The previous medical examiners hadn't tested for it because there was no reason to suspect it at the time. The landlord, Gregory Mitchell, was arrested and charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter and multiple counts of reckless endangerment. The investigation revealed he'd known about problems with the furnace since at least 2007. Multiple tenants before 2008 had complained about issues, But rather than replace the expensive system, he'd paid for minimal repairs. He'd removed the carbon monoxide detectors that had been installed by previous tenants, claiming he was updating the units but never replaced them. He'd kept rents artificially low to ensure quick turnover when tenants left, never asking too many questions about why they were leaving. The prosecution argued that Mitchell's negligence and greed had created a death trap. His failure to maintain a critical safety system and his deliberate removal of warning devices directly caused 4 deaths. The defense claimed he was ignorant of the danger, that he'd relied on repair technicians who'd assured him the furnace was functional. But testimony from those technicians revealed they'd repeatedly recommended full replacement and warned of potential carbon monoxide risks.
In 2017, Gregory Mitchell was convicted on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the judge noting that his actions represented a callous disregard for human life in pursuit of profit. The families of the victims filed civil suits and were awarded significant damages, though no amount of money could restore what they'd lost. This case changed regulations in St. Louis and many other jurisdictions. Laws were strengthened requiring carbon monoxide detectors in all rental properties, mandatory inspections of heating systems, and stricter penalties for landlords who neglect safety equipment. Brian Walsh, the man who survived and uncovered the truth, became an advocate for carbon monoxide awareness, speaking at schools and community events about the importance of detectors. The house itself was eventually sold, completely renovated with all new systems, and properly equipped with multiple carbon monoxide detectors. A family lives there now, safe and unaware of the building's dark history unless they search public records.